The Reddit Bureau of Investigation is a subreddit created for the purpose of using the power of the internet to solve real-world problems. In this video, we'll take a look at some of the most unsettling mysteries on here, from a user who believes they were repeatedly spiked as a child, to another who found a strange phone in a house they just started renting. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can become a Ko-fi member or a channel member to gain access to uncut videos and other perks, or you can leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will cover a range of topics that some might find triggering, including child SA, mental illness, and self-inflicted death. Viewer discretion is advised. You can click the link in the description and become a Ko-fi member to watch a longer, uncut and ad-free version of this video, which includes a whole extra entry that was unsuitable for this cut. A few months ago, a user made a post titled, "What substance could it have been? Major content warning, abuse of a minor." The post read, "Hey y'all, I'm not sure if this is the best place for this. Happy to redirect if needed. Having more input on this would be meaningful to my healing process as I'm currently trying to process what happened to me as a child. Final content warning, child abuse, mentions of CSA. So when I was a child, there was an adult in my life who would regularly try to put some kind of substance in my food. It was white, in my memory kinda chalky, and most importantly it had a distinct classic medicinal taste to it. Stupid to use that if you're trying to be covert, but he wasn't very smart, I'll say that much. He denied ever putting anything in my food, but it happened more times than I can count, only when I was alone with him, and one other time to both my young female friend and I, who were in the house alone with him. She noticed it in her food first, and thankfully I discouraged her from eating it, so I believe she made it out unscathed. I'm aware there's no way to be for sure, but I'd love some input to possibly narrow it down. I know it having a flavour rules out the classic roofie because I've heard that's pretty flavourless, and I really do recall it being chalky / didn't really mix the best with other things. I'd find chunks of it here and there when it was in my food. I have reason to believe it may have been some sort of sedative and its purpose was to render me unconscious. I don't have proof of that though, and it would be cool if there was some sort of logical explanation that doesn't point to CSA, which unfortunately I believe is what happened based on the sparse memories I do have. I appreciate any input, and I know how Reddit can be sometimes, so if possible I'd appreciate if you're going to comment, refrain from any snarky remarks. I don't think this is the place for that. If you think this is a stupid question, that's fine, just don't tell me, if you can help it. Thanks again. This is the most publicly I've ever shared details of this story, so if you're still reading, thanks for being here, sending you my love. There are so many horrible aspects of this story. Obviously the main one being that OP believes they were SA'd as a child, but it's a pretty unique case in that they don't actually know for sure, and I don't know if that's better or worse. On one hand, at least they don't have vivid memories of the SA itself. On the other, it must drive them crazy not being able to remember whether it happened or not, let alone not being able to prove it. I can't imagine the self-doubt, confusion and frustration they must feel when thinking back on this. They did actually clarify in the comments that they had 2 memories of being inappropriately touched by this person, they just don't know if it went further than that. It sounds like they didn't want to divulge that information in the post, but felt pressured to when other users were misunderstanding their reasons for believing they were SA'd. So turns out OP has the worst of both worlds, memories of SA and uncertainty about what else happened. OP doesn't specify who this adult was, but he was living in the same house, so I wonder if it was their mother's partner. They said in a comment that he lived with them for 5 or 6 years, and they recalled having crazy dreams around that time, sleep paralysis and debilitating nightmares, and they'd been diagnosed with insomnia the same year the adult moved in, so it's clear they were deeply affected by him, whether he was drugging them or not. It sounds pretty likely that he was though, given that they literally found chunks of powder in their food. Here are a couple of excerpts from their comments with more context, quote, "Whatever the duration or window of time the sedative knocked me out for, if that's what it was, I think it was on the shorter side as well, although I honestly don't think I consumed it too many times. I was pretty smart, and as soon as I started noticing it, I was on high alert all the time. No daytime drowsiness that I recall though. I was hyperactive and having behavioural problems and major issues with focus. I lived with him for at least 5 or 6 years of my childhood. Might be slightly off, but I don't care to ask my mum for confirmation. Touchy subject. So there wasn't really much time to see how I felt when he wasn't there. I never stopped struggling with it though. I still deal with it to this day, but I notice it being more manageable in times in my life where I feel more safety. I believe the insomnia was my body's way of trying to keep me safe rather than a side effect of the meds, but it does also possibly rule out meds that cause additional drowsiness, because I'm guessing I wouldn't have struggled so much to sleep at night if I was on something that made me tired. I really don't think I was actually consuming it super regularly though. We were only alone in the house together once or twice a week, and I feel I usually spotted it or just didn't eat what he gave me those days, so there wouldn't have been time for the more cumulative side effects. I do remember the vivid nightmares and sleep paralysis being sporadic in some ways, so that could possibly point to being a side effect. I did stay at my dad's house sometimes, never dealt with sleep paralysis there, ever, but did still struggle to sleep. As for what the substance could have been, I wouldn't even know what to suggest. As OP said, Rohypnol is supposed to be nearly tasteless, and that's the most common drug you hear people spiking others with. Before I read their comment confirming that they were SA'd by this man, I was hoping that there might be an innocent explanation. Perhaps sleeping pills, but to treat their insomnia rather than anything more nefarious. Though with this information, that almost definitely wasn't the case. Another user also suggested antibiotics, but OP said that was unlikely for a number of reasons. He tried to give it to their friend as well. It only happened when they were home alone with him. They remember it happening for several years, and there's no reason they'd be given antibiotics for so long. And finally, he denied putting anything in the food at all. Another user said it was likely a prescription drug in a capsule that was pulled apart and sprinkled on the food, which sounds plausible, although the chalky texture described by OP possibly points more towards a crushed up tablet. Anyway, a comment under this suggested Benadryl. Diphenhydramine is an antihistamine that's sold under the name Benadryl among others. It can also be described as a sedative and is known to cause drowsiness in most people, hence it's not usually recommended by doctors anymore, as newer antihistamines have fewer side effects. Some people suffering with insomnia even use Benadryl to help them sleep, though this isn't recommended long term. I've never taken Benadryl personally, and I'm not entirely sure how plausible it is that it would be used as a sedative to SA someone. I've heard of people taking it recreationally, but as far as I'm aware, this is because in high doses it can make you hallucinate. I don't think people are taking it just to pass out straight away. Further down in the comments is a much more plausible suggestion though, Ambien. This is a sedative that is prescribed short-term to treat insomnia. It works in around 30 minutes and can wear off pretty quickly, but the effects vary from person to person, so it sounds like it's possible that it could be used for nefarious purposes like this. OP said their earliest memory of it was around 2010, by which time Ambien was commonly prescribed, and when someone said it had sort of a tongue-numbing taste, they replied, "Wow, yeah, sounds like that could be it for sure. Bitter and tongue-numbing. And chalky/chunky in a way that would come from a pill that was crushed up rather than a capsule that was opened. Thanks so much for the input. I had no idea Ambien had that distinctive flavour." In another comment, OP said Ambien definitely seems the most likely thing so far. Ultimately, it doesn't make a difference what it was if OP's suspicions are correct and this man was drugging them with something. Given that they do remember being SA'd by him other times, it'd hardly be surprising if he tried to do it again with the help of some kind of substance. It sounds like OP doesn't plan to report it to the police, which is absolutely their right. There is a chance he could still face consequences for his actions if they change their mind, but it's totally understandable if they don't want to go through all that. All I can say is I hope they find closure and a way to move on from all this. The next post we're going to cover was from just a few days ago at the time of writing this script and was titled, "I believe my brother has been replaced." It read, "I, male 30, want to preface by saying I'm not mentally ill and this is not the schizo post you are expecting. I have no better way to articulate what I'm thinking right now. My brother, male 20, just came back from his gap year, travelling Asia in hopes that he'd find himself. We were never really close, so this lack of contact during this year didn't strike me with too much alarm, but my parents have informed me of 3 separate incidents in which they needed to contact consulate authorities to ask about him. He's a mummy's boy, so this did seem very out of character. We hosted a dinner for my brother's return to the country, but upon seeing him at the airport, it was like a stranger tried to draw my brother from memory and pass that as the real thing. He looked completely different. He was severely underweight, he looked 2 to 3 inches shorter, he seemed bedraggled and unkempt. Believe me, this was the opposite of my brother prior to his trip. He has always been a germaphobe, someone who washes his hands twice to make sure he eliminates all the bacteria. But this guy, he smelled horrendous. He didn't even talk to us or properly acknowledge our existence. He begrudgingly gave our mum a hug and our dad a handshake. He did not say hello to me. It's been around 2 weeks, and what I've been hearing from my parents is horrifying. Apparently he's been extremely active at night and sleeping during the day. They can only get faint murmurs out of him, and his speech is becoming increasingly nonsensical. He doesn't shower, he doesn't seem to eat. He spends all his time locked away in his room, doing something, my parents don't know what, extremely loudly. They've already contacted a doctor and he's on a waiting list to see a therapist. I suggested getting the police involved, but they were determined not to. My mum is afraid, and I don't know what to do. I've volunteered to stay over and be the peacekeeper, as our parents are getting old, and I'm personally worried about that psycho doing something to them. However, my parents have too rejected this. I was never close with my brother, but this isn't him at all. Does anyone know what could have caused this, or what we can do? It's like someone kidnapped my brother and replaced him with the dude from Castaway. My first thought after reading this was drugs or psychosis. Some of these personality changes, particularly his hygiene habits, could be explained by him getting used to a different way of life during his gap year. When people are travelling, particularly if they're taking 20-hour sleeper buses with no shower breaks, staying in hostels where they share a bedroom with 7 other people, and regularly doing long sweaty hikes in 35 degrees heat, there isn't much opportunity to be a germaphobe. The travelling could also explain him being active at night and sleeping during the day. It can take a while to adapt when you've been used to a totally different time zone for a year. Some of the other details are more concerning though. The fact that he stopped checking in with his parents while he was away and seemed to be very withdrawn when he returned could well point to some kind of mental health issues, be they drug-induced or otherwise. The strangest thing in the post is when OP said he looked 2 to 3 inches shorter though. It's possible OP misremembered his height before, but if he was right, I can't think of any reason why his brother would shrink in height. At 20 years old, if anything, he might have even grown an inch or 2. The title of the post did make it sound like one of these posts where someone claims their relative has been replaced by a reptile or something, and it wasn't, so thankfully at least we have no reason to doubt OP's mental state. But this is a rare case where even I would be wondering if my brother was actually my brother. There was an edit on the post which read, I've seen a lot of people suggest theories, including drug use or underlying mental health issues. I had my mother over today, primarily to talk about my brother's condition. My wife was against mentioning the DNA test I ordered, so they are still unaware of my suspicions. My mum told me about the 3 incidents involving the authorities in Vietnam. The first one was a wellness check after my parents heard nothing from him for about a week. This might have been overzealousness on my mum's part. The second and third instances were actually a part of the same correspondence, but turned out to be much more disturbing than I thought. Local authorities were worried my brother and 2 other female friends had been trafficked in Laos as they failed to return to Vietnam on time. However, this was resolved after half a month. I have no idea the status of his friends, but I suspect they all returned to Vietnam together. With regards to my brother at present, my parents have since agreed to my suggestions of adding cameras to communal areas as well as installing a doorstop in their own room. They've also given me news that they will go private to seek psychiatric treatment for him starting next week. We'll keep you all updated. While after reading this, I was still almost 100% sure that drugs or mental illness, or both, were responsible for this drastic change in the brother's personality, I have to admit, when the update mentioned the Vietnamese authorities being worried he'd been trafficked, it did make me wonder for a moment if there was more to this. OP did imply in a comment though that while his appearance had changed significantly, they did ultimately realise it was him, quote, "From my brief time with him at the airport, it has been the one and only time we've interacted since his return. I noticed he was considerably shorter, extremely underweight, more gaunt looking, and facial hair that hid a lot of his defining features. Genetically, we have quite sharp jaws, the both of us, but when he returned, it seemed as though he gained weight in the face and lost it everywhere else. His nose also seemed crooked, but this could have been from a fight. Aside from that, his core features looked roughly the same, if not incredibly tired and worn out. To us he looked unrecognisable, but it was his voice which made us realise it was him." Just 6 days after the original post, OP provided an update with the worst possible news, quote, "Hey all, I thought I'd share an update. This will also be my last post on this site, and I wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who commented. To those who provided genuine help and support, I couldn't be more thankful. My brother is dead. We found him in the early hours of this morning, and I've spent the rest of the day finding the courage to make this post. Maybe it's shock, but I'd like to think he died over in Vietnam, and upon his return, his body was simply catching up, rather than prolong his torment. You all do a wonderful service here, so please keep doing what you're doing. All the best." In response to a comment telling OP to take care of himself and his parents, he replied, "They are a lot more devastated than I am. I think it's because they view the past 20 years to be a waste. I don't view it this way. My brother lit up every room, and every moment I had with him was cherished. However, I do also believe this moment was inevitable since he returned. In a weird way, I'm glad he went out on his own terms rather than endure what could have been years of pain." This comment very much implies that the brother took his own life, so while OP didn't outright explain what happened, it seems likely he was suffering with his mental health. I guess this ending wasn't unpredictable, but it still felt like a punch in the gut to read the words, "My brother is dead," even though I never knew him, so I can't even imagine what his family is going through. I always hope for the best outcome in stories like this, and honestly expected the update to say he was receiving treatment. But as OP said, this was probably one of those cases where his brother was already too far gone before he even got back home, and there was likely little they could have done to save him. The family did try to help him and got him on a waiting list for a therapist, but how were they to know this would happen so soon? I guess this tragic story should serve as a reminder to us all to act as fast as possible when we see someone withdrawing or experiencing drastic personality changes. We really never know what's right around the corner. In August 2024, there was a post titled, "Found a locked, no SIM card iPhone hidden behind a wall picture in my bedroom. What should I do next?" It read, "Hi everyone, this is my first post asking for advice here since I'm not sure where to post. Please let me know if there is any other community that is more appropriate for my post. For context, me and my other two friends have just moved in a new place, which is a basement in a house. It used to be an Airbnb, but my current landlord eventually decided to rent it out. Everything is perfect until I was cleaning my bedroom today and an iPhone hidden in a picture hanging in the wall fell down on my head. The photo was hanging above my bed head. There is no SIM card in the phone and it has a passcode so we couldn't go through it, but apparently it looks new and was off when I found it. I tried to charge it and it was around 22% of battery. I talked to my landlord and she said it was probably from the previous people who lived there. She will take the phone tomorrow to return to the Airbnb service. But still, it made me worried since it was not forgotten, it was hidden behind a photo in my room. Is there anything I should do or just leave it for my landlord?" OP shared an Imgur link to a photo of the phone. You can see it on screen now. The lock screen is a photo of a dog that looks more like a photo someone took of their own pet rather than a professional one. From that alone, it seems like it is someone's personal phone. But then as OP said, it seems highly unlikely that someone accidentally left it there, because it's not like it was found down the side of the bed or something, where someone could have dropped it and not been able to find it. It was literally hidden behind the photo, suggesting that whoever put it there for whatever reason didn't want it to be found. If someone was using it at the time, you'd expect there to be a SIM card in it too. At least the fact that it was turned off with no SIM card means it probably wasn't put there to spy on OP. As far as I'm aware, it would need a power source, though I'm certainly not a tech expert, so correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. OP also clarified in an update comment that there was no hole in the picture that the phone could have seen through. Here's that comment. Update. Thank you for the advice, everyone. I didn't expect for this post to blow up. I wrote it in the middle of the night, right after finding the phone, so it missed out some details. My apologies. I tried to turn on the phone this afternoon and it showed a wallpaper of a dog. I also updated the photo to show where I originally found the phone. I just moved into this new place since August 18th, which is more than a week ago. The place has been renovated and painted over, and yes, it was fully furnished. Edit. I did check if the phone could see through the picture or if there was any hole in the picture, but it was just a normal hanging picture. Me and my friends checked the other photos hanging in the kitchen and the other bedroom, but seems like only my bedroom has this hidden phone. We also scanned for hidden cameras and stuff. Nothing else has been discovered. I tried to use their Hey Siri, whose phone is this trick, but it requires passcode to activate Siri, so I still don't know the owner of this phone yet. Thank you very much for all your comments. Can't reply to them all, but I do read all of your advice. The landlord hasn't come to pick up the phone yet, so I still have it with me now. This seems to rule out the phone being used to spy on OP or anyone else. I guess it could have been recording audio if it had been turned on, but what would be the point? You can also buy spy cameras and microphones for cheaper than an iPhone, so using it for that purpose doesn't make any sense. I did initially wonder, since the property was used for an Airbnb previously, if it was a guest's spare phone that they'd hidden in the picture so it didn't get stolen if there was a break-in, but then why did they never get it back? I always take a spare phone when travelling, and I'm pretty forgetful, so I could see myself leaving the phone when I checked out, but I'd have to totally forget I ever put it behind the picture in the first place to not ask the host for it later, which seems very unlikely. Also, my spare is a cheap Xiaomi phone that wouldn't even be worth hiding. Whoever owned this iPhone would have to care about it enough to hide it in the first place, but then not enough to remember or retrieve it. Furthermore, OP said that the whole place was renovated, including painting, so how did no one find it before? One popular suggestion in the thread was that the previous tenant had hidden the phone from their partner, either because they were cheating or because they felt they were in danger. I guess it's possible, but remember this was an Airbnb before OP moved in, so it sounds like there were no long-term previous tenants for quite some time. Also, if this were the case, you'd expect the phone to have a SIM card. Another suggestion was that the phone was being hidden from the police there. One user even suggested it may have been used for CP. They claim to work in IT and to have seen this kind of thing happen. If that was the case though, and someone went to the lengths of buying a separate phone and hiding it, surely they wouldn't be using their own Wi-Fi, so why was there no SIM card? Perhaps they destroyed it, but then why leave the phone there? One user asked if someone could buy a burner phone with data included and watch illegal things without being caught, and the IT user replied, "It depends on a lot of things. For example, are they using mobile data, free Wi-Fi, or a private network? Also, it depends on if they use a VPN that masks your location. It depends what type of settings they have on their device. A lot of different things come into play. But unfortunately, it happens more than you would think. When we're working on devices, we don't have time to go looking through someone's stuff, so I'm sure it would be noticed far more if that was the case. The only time we usually come across this is if we're doing a data transfer or backup." CP is not necessarily the only possibility in terms of illegal things this phone could have been used for. Drugs is another. As with the hiding from their partner theory though, remember this was an Airbnb before. How likely is it that someone is going to be dealing drugs out of an Airbnb? I guess it's not impossible, but it doesn't feel like the most logical theory. And again, how did no one find it when they were renovating? The only other theory I can think of which makes the most sense to me is that it's a stolen phone and whoever stole it removed the SIM card and hid it there until they could sell it or something. This doesn't explain how it wasn't found by whoever renovated the property, but it could explain why no one came back for it. They probably just decided to cut their losses rather than risk being arrested. That's my best guess anyway. It doesn't look like OP ever posted another update, so I'm guessing they never found out for sure. The final post we'll cover in this video was titled, "Weird Accident at the Psychiatric Hospital." It read, "Can you help me understand this? This is a true story. It happened yesterday at my work. The police are working on it. A resident of a psychiatric hospital is alone in his room, which has only one door for access. At 7 a.m, a caregiver enters the room to make the bed. She leaves without noticing anything unusual. In the meantime, it can be assumed that the resident showers and dresses. There are no sharp objects in the room, no objects that could hurt him. At 9 a.m, surveillance footage shows a nurse entering the room and discovering a surprising scene. The cameras show that no one else entered or left the room. There is a puddle of blood at the entrance to the bathroom and another at the shower. The bed is unmade, with a bloodstain about 30 centimeters in diameter at the foot of the bed. There are many drops of blood next to the bed as if it has been projected. There are strange patterns of blood trails, like splatters and streaks, a lot of blood, about 1 liter of blood in total. The window is locked. The resident's clothes have no stains. He has no blood on him. He has long hair and a beard, and both are intact. A urine analysis shows no trace of blood. An anal exam shows no blood. An inspection of the entire body reveals no injuries. An oral and nasal examination shows no trace of blood. The resident says he showered and then saw the blood, or red paint as he calls it, and doesn't know where it came from. He feels no pain and says nothing else. His vital signs are excellent. Update: the shower was supervised and the water was closed because he is known to be abusing use of water. No antecedent of esophagus varices or ulcer. It's human blood. Update 2: apparently he has an extreme distended bladder. To me it doesn't explain the blood, but that's the results of the scanner. You probably got the gist of that, but in case one or two details are a little unclear, here's a quick timeline of events after OP clarified some things in the comments. At 7 AM, a caregiver enters the room to make the bed and presumably perform a routine search. There is no blood at this time. At some point between 7 and 9 AM, the patient takes a shower. He is supervised and the water is turned off after. He remains in his room the whole time until 9 AM, which is apparently very unusual. At 9 AM, a nurse enters the room and notices blood at the entrance to the bathroom, around the shower, and at the bottom of the bed. Patient is then examined, but there are no signs of blood or any injuries on him, apart from some very tiny scratches on his head. As I understand it, the patient had access to the bathroom the whole time, but wouldn't have been able to shower again because the water was off. The patient was also presumably the only one with access to the bathroom during this time, apart from members of staff. So where did the blood come from when he didn't have any actually on him? OP did mention one possible cause in her post, though she didn't believe it explained it. He had a distended bladder. This is when the bladder gets inflamed or stretched, and it can cause blood in the urine. However, the urine test showed no traces of blood in the urine, and it would seem unlikely that he would have bled so much in a relatively short space of time, then just totally stopped bleeding. OP didn't seem to believe the liquid was bloody urine anyway. She said it coagulated, so it was presumably pure blood. I think it is likely that she misjudged the amount of it though. A bit of blood can look like a lot more than it is, and in reality it was probably much less than a litre. It seemed to me that the blood must have come from the patient somehow, but a few of the commenters had other ideas. Some suggested that he had either found a small animal, like a mouse or lizard, or taken one from outside and killed it, then disposed of the body by flushing it down the toilet or something. This is a pretty horrifying theory, and OP even said it was maybe a possibility. But you would expect there to have been blood on the patient if that was the case. Bearing in mind the water for the shower was turned off after he used it, and the blood wasn't there before. There were various other theories from nosebleeds to him somehow harming himself, but thankfully we actually got an answer to this mystery. According to a comment by OP, it turned out the patient had a circulation problem in his feet and legs, and a vein burst and sprayed blood everywhere. So that's a much less nefarious reality than some of the comments suggested. I'm still not sure how he had no visible blood on him, but it is possible for a significant amount of blood to come from an almost invisible wound, particularly if the patient is elderly, which it sounds like he is. If he has varicose veins and discoloration in his legs anyway, it's entirely possible the nurses missed a small wound when visibly examining him. Anyway, mystery solved. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments, plus any topics you might like me to cover in the future. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my Ko-fi members and channel members whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in a new video.